Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining and taking time out of your day. We really appreciate it. I am going to move quickly through three connected pieces of how teams plan, buy, and get product to where it needs to go today. I won't click every button. There's a lot more to go into, so feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and I'll get to them in either the workflow or after, or we can set up some separate time to go in deeper. Really quickly, Toolio is an integrated merchandise planning platform built for the way retail teams actually work. So being able to replace the spreadsheets and disconnected tools with that your team relies on today with an environment that moves as fast as your business does. And so kicking off, we will start off in merchandise plan. Wanted to introduce a key concept here, which is that attribute-based modeling. So what this means is you're able to plan your business in how you like to see it. So you're not forced into this rigid hierarchy. Um, and you're able to plan the way your business actually runs, creating that single source of truth, not five spreadsheets that need to agree with each other later. And so, merchandise plan is that tops down, middle out, open to buy, where you're setting your financial targets. And then from there, we will feed into assortment planning. And the key concept here is that holistic assortment plan. So, this is really ensuring that your core, your carryover, your newness aren't three separate plans on three separate tabs. They're one living plan, and every choice is time phased across the season, rolling up to that financial target that you've already set. This is where we have that item level planning in terms of preseason and then in season. And then the output of assortment planning is purchase orders. And then finishing up in allocation, which is ensuring you're getting your right product to the right stores at the right time. Initial shipments and replenishment are included in this one module. So that way you're always working off the same number, not different tools with different logics. And you can really see that product life cycle from beginning to end. And then this is really what this means is everything you're about to see is that one connected loop where you can plan, assort, allocate, and then continue the process over and over again. Jumping into the tool. Okay, so starting off in merchandise plan, again, this is where I'm setting my top line financial targets, my open to buy. When I first jump into Toolio, I noticed that it has that look and feel of a spreadsheet, and that is intentional. I'm coming from Excel today, so the familiarity from day one is a big reason of why we actually see teams adopt the tool. And when I mentioned attribute-based modeling, I can then group in, add different attributes. I added in class, but have support up to 10 to be able to give me that flexibility. And it gives me this pivotable grid where I can drill into anything underneath it. I can move between time, whether I want to look at it between different weeks, relative. I can also move between seasons. So as I'm planning my spring 27, I can adjust there, or I can go into various years, relative time frame, and then truly custom relative. And just continuing on with a bit of the orientation before we get into the workflows. There's over 250 metrics that are available on day one. However, there's also variance on top of those metrics, meaning that as I'm looking at different items, I can say, okay, for my gross sales retail, I want to have a lot of different metrics that I'm able to plan and dig into. Whereas something else like a VOP ticket, I'm okay with having a few less. So that way I'm able to really configure that context and how I'm wanting to review my business. And so, as I'm talking through this, I do have the ability to also just truly make any inputs here. I adjusted this to 15 million and then can see those blue carrots of what had been impacted flowing all the way through those the various metrics. And then it's also impacting anything that is not visible as well, ensuring that I have that single source of truth and there's not a formula breaking or anything like that. And then I also have my attributes that are in my product hierarchy, but there's flexibility in terms of being able to plan it for dynamic groups. So let's say I don't have bottoms in my hierarchy in my product hierarchy, but I want to plan all of bottoms together. I can then group them all together here and again make any of those inputs, and then it will actually cascade all the way down to what I have grouped here, giving me that flexibility and agility to see how things can be grouped together on the fly. And then I also have the ability to look at a quick filter. So if I want to review just my units in any kind of as a quick snapshot, I can switch this to any of those metrics and then giving me that grid reference available. And so, of course, that flexible grid is great, but it only matters if there is a process behind it. And my whole process is ultimately run on scenarios. And what a scenario is letting me plan a time period in my own space, a moment, a version, a moment, and then I can merge that into a plan that everyone works from. And that's what's keeping everyone clear on kind of that single source of truth and what plan we're using going forward. This is where I'd spin one up. I can keep it private if I am not ready to share with the team, or I can make it public if I do want my team to follow along. I also can take snapshots. So what this means is I'm able to look at my previous months and see exactly how those actuals moved compared to plan, ensuring that my inventory and all of those other metrics don't continue to actualize. In my past, I had to save an Excel file and break the links or save a PDF, so that way I had that reference for me. Awesome. And so as I am creating my new scenario, I can then move into 2027. And I have a blank screen here. And so where do I start from here? There's a couple of different approaches. One of them is a forecast approach where I can actually forecast and project a trend off of my most recent sales or merch plan, but I can also seed. And so I'll go ahead and do that right now. And so, what I'm doing here is putting that strategic starting place where I'm able to, where I can then plan in here and give myself that starting point of how I want to go ahead and plan. So that way, as I'm planning through this, I am then can work through, okay, I have my starting point. Now, what do I want to do from here? And so from this, once I'm ready to graduate this, I can merge it to a different scenario. I can set approvals so that way that scenario is continues to be maybe my VP needs to approve it if I'm more of a junior planner. There are just options in terms of that configurability. And so we've been working so far in merchandise plan, but there's store plan, these other multi-plans available. And I can go ahead and look at my long range plan really quickly. And this is where I would shift a seat. So I can move into a store. I can move into a store planner if I'm trying to plan by store. I can look into finance, really being able to plan into 2027, 2028, and beyond. And what this means is I'm actually able to also reconcile these plans together. So what I can do is take my source plan for long range, target that for merchandise plan and get those sales and receipts to match for a future year that maybe I'm not ready to plan from a merchandise plan perspective, but finance already wants to have that those details in place, really giving me the ability to have those match in a way that would have taken me kind of hours in my past. And then the last thing within merchandise plan that I want to highlight is Toolie. And so Toolie is your AI planning assistant. And it is built to really handle that tactical, repetitive work. So that way your planners can focus on the strategic calls. And so I can interact with Toolie a couple of ways. I can just truly chat with it and ask different questions about my plan, about my data. But I also can give it a skill. So what I ran so far was this Monday morning review. And what this is giving a repeatable task to Toolie to be able to say, whoever on my team runs it, or in the organization, they're really able to get the same read, the same numbers, because you're only using the data sitting in your plan and also a clear way of how you're wanting that data to be interpreted. So that report that used to pull a planner off of their real work is now Toolie's job, really being able to free up your team to spend that time on the decision rather than the data gathering. And so this was a quick loop of merchandise planning, of being able to plan at those hierarchy levels, move between time, move between different dynamic grouping if that's something that you are wanting to have that or if you want to have that flexibility on the fly. I can create my new scenarios, I can seed, I can reconcile between the multi plans, giving me, being able to have that one source of truth. From there, we would then move into assortment planning. And within assortment planning, this is where your core, your carryover, your newness all come together as that one living plan with a single view of the whole assortment. I'm looking at a line plan right now, and I can arrow down to any of these different items and see almost like a mini open to buy at the bottom with all of the item level details. Every line has a plan associated with it. And then I also can roll it all up and reconcile this back to my financial plan that I just built. So I have my bottoms up in my assortment plan and then my tops down for my merchandise plan. And what is makes this a holistic assortment planning is that your assortment is a living, breathing thing. Products drop in, products drop out. Um, and so as I move through time, I can see for my spring 27, I only have a couple of options compared to that long list of what I had in my 2026 view. And so I can see here, okay, I've got a lot of work to do before I get into spring 27. And so how do I actually build an assortment? I know this was always the hardest part for me in my past and what we hear from a lot of customers that there's never enough time to re-examine every choice. So last year ends up becoming the default, not because anyone wants it that way, but because there's not a tool to really give you that starting point. There are a couple different approaches in how you can plan an assortment. I'm going to go ahead and just highlight the from the most basic to most demand driven. But starting off, I can actually just add in a new style from here. As a placeholder, I can say, I know I need a new t-shirt. We design's working on it. They'll let me know when they are ready to go there. And so the other method is compare mode. This is having a look back at past assortments and giving me the context from an actual sales, etc., to be able to have that kind of comp planning where I can say this was my top selling item. I know I need to comp it. Here's my new like for like placeholder. I can repeat something year over year if that is something that I bring back every single year. And then I also can I also can extend something if it is going to graduate from seasonal to core based on performance, then I can go ahead and truly just extend that. Awesome. And so the last way to be able to build an assortment is through hindsight and rationalization. And just starting off with rationalization, this is where the system's already doing that work. It's taking my budget and it's spreading it, in this case, by division, by cluster, and hands me back that recommended choice count where I can then see what the cleanse rate of sale is, looking at when I was in stock, down to the size level by store, ensuring that I'm only looking at those good weeks, and then also taking into account my growth factor, which I had set in my merchandise plan. So between those, we're then able to recommend what that assortment should be. And what I can do here is seed in that assortment as well. And so, how did it get to this recommended assortment? It did that through hindsight. And my hindsight today can really tell me what rose to the top. I can see where that marginal return curve started to kind of come into place with my assortment. Um, and where I really can cut the long tail, being able to put those dollars into higher performing products, improving my sales, improving reducing my markdowns, improving my margin, all of that great stuff. And so moving back into my assortment, I can then see my placeholders have been added in for my hindsight and rationalization. From there, I can go to my style bank, which is set to my PLM system. And once I'm ready to have those be adopted into real styles, then I can actually just drag this over and then assign that option. Awesome. And so this is, again, that kind of quick options in terms of how you can plan your assortment. As I look into my in season, wanted to highlight one item in particular where I can see on a weekly basis where this item is continuing to forecast. So let me visualize this. I can see my original sales. I can see how my actuals are coming in. I can see the system reforecasting. And what this is our tournament forecasting, where we're running multiple models, machine learning models, to go ahead and back test which forecast would have been most accurate and then apply that going forward. And so this is doing this for every single item, every single cluster, every week, knowing that one model could fit with one cluster and the other model B could be with the second cluster, et cetera. However, it's not a black box. You always have the ability to go into this adjusted line and say, we're thinking about testing out a new event in a couple of weeks. What does that do to my sales? What does that do to my receipts? And then this ultimately drives that receipt plan as well, which you can see within here. So I can see by size when my recommended receipts are planned to come in based on all of those sales. You'll also notice here there was this purple where there was the unit sales lift units. And this is taking into account an active promo, which is managed in our settings screen, but you can have that recommended lift or that expected lift based on the discount. And then that is being taken into account in these forecasts as well. I also have the ability to collaborate with different members of my team, giving me the ability to just work within the system, not having to check through my Slacks, check through my emails, and be able to make sure everyone has that same context. In terms of how I'm planning, I also have the ability to go into gallery view where I can assess the balance of my line, ensuring that didn't end up with too many pops of color, too many core items, too many navies, etc. And then the last piece within assortment planning reporting that I wanted to highlight is this connection between MP AP reconciliation. So, of course, at the top of my assortment, I had that MP AP roll up, which was looking at it by cluster or by assortment. This is giving me the ability to look at a total view, and again, being able to filter down to any of these items that I would like. And then, as I mentioned, ultimately the output of assortment planning is recommended purchase orders. So this is where that recommended purchase order can then connect to my ERP, giving that connection point of here was the receipts, here's the purchase order, which would have saved me an unthinkable amount of time in my past. And so now we've seen how assortment planning is able to turn a target into the right buy, but let's talk about how allocation takes that same plan and gets you to the right store. And so this is where the assortment that you just built gets to that right store at the right time at the right size. And this, starting off here, these are my allocation strategies. And every allocation starts as a strategy that's built on four basic inputs. So we have the product, the location list, the start end date, and then the expected demand. There are a couple of options there that I'll go into in just a moment. But overall, you're telling the system what, where, when, and how much. And then everything downstream is generated from that single strategy. There is the ability to set allocation defaults, so that way you're not having to go through and set everything up one by one. The other option is, you'll notice within demand type, there's total sales, rate of sale, and then assortment plan. With the assortment plan functionality, I'm able to take that buy and then seed in my allocation strategies as soon as that buy is done, making sure that that handoff from how I intended to buy to where the product is going to go is seamless. And so this guy. Awesome. So then from here, we will go into an item specifically to be able to review. So as I mentioned, I'm able to see both my initial allocation and my replenishment in one view. So I can see I have 1,000 units coming in this week. This is the start and end date for this item, how many units we are expected to sell. And then from there, we're then taking that sales curve and then location curve to be able to say, this is where my demand is going to, this is where I need to send these products based on this demand, ensuring that all of that is going into the future where you're going to sell it compared to where you have sold it in the past. Of course, there's always other things that are being taken into account. So I have my order cycle, I have my safety stock, I have my presentation profile, holdback percentage, and then push all, which all again can be configured, whether that is from being fed in from assortment planning or in allocation strategies, which can be set at any level. So that way the team is really able to focus on that strategy compared to inputs. Within here, wanted to highlight exception management. So, really this is giving me that long range view of my total sales units, my end of period units for my total fleet, and then by location, but also giving me exception metrics such as shortfall, excess, potential lost sales. So that way I can really be able to see where do I potentially have revenue left on the table in one store compared to another. How would that impact my future allocation strategies from here? Once I've reviewed all of my different levels, this is at that top level, but there is the ability to look down by item, of course, much more granular options here. My transfer order default is able to connect to my ERP, giving me an allocation summary within these widgets, making sure that I have that context. So that way, if there is anything from an exception management point, I have that perspective as well. If there is any need to transfer between different stores for any reason, there is the ability to, I'm able to manage that through my redistribution matrix, ensuring that if I don't want to send a product from Oregon to Florida, that I have that set in here. So that way I can really ensure that I'm controlling that cost and that I'm following that inventory flow. Okay. And so, last thing with allocation that I wanted to highlight is we do have our MCP server. And so I'm using Claude right now, but this is agnostic to any of the different tools that you and your team are using. And so I have Toolie, which is in-app where I'm able to connect and chat with, but I also can access any of my plan information through Claude, and again, or any of the other tools. So here's where I can say connect to my tenant and pull in an allocation recap. So thinking maybe your C-suite or another cross-functional group that maybe doesn't want to go into Toolio can get information this way as well. I can also create a recap and have this be ready to send to stores on a weekly basis. So a lot of different options here. And so overall, really quick overview of going through merchandise planning where you're able to set your single source of truth that will then feed into your assortment and your allocation, making sure that everything can trace back to that same number, not three different systems, many different spreadsheets, all of that. Nothing is frozen at preseason, so you're able to always manage different scenarios, forecasts, exceptions. It's all live, projected forward, and then re-ranking against reality the whole way through. And then the different AI pieces, you don't have to be in Toolio to get that value from it. That same data, the same answers are available wherever your team already works. Any questions for today? I know that was quite quick, so looking forward to continuing the conversation with everyone and digging in more. Oh, do you have the Gregorian calendar? We do, yes. So within this year, I'm able to flip between the Gregorian projection as well. So that way I can plan a lot of the finance teams that we work with will plan in that. Great question. Can you set permissions? Yes, yes, you can set permissions. So all of that can be configured within the settings screen. So that way, you're able to really ensure that the whatever access you're looking for your team, you're able to set from there. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys again so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it and hope you have a good one.